All right. So we have the incredible storyteller, Aaron Green. You're going to learn about his incredible experience. He remembers before he incarnated in this body where he came from, and he's going to tell you his story. Now, he is someone that I found on YouTube, and I was like, I cannot wait to meet this person. I want to interview him. I have so many questions, but the biggest incentive that I have is I know a lot of people on this channel are those that are ambassadors of love, and many of you're on the twin flame path, or you want to find your life partner, or maybe you've already done that and you want to call in a starseed child. So I myself, I'm 44 years old. My husband and I have decided that we're going to conceive our next baby. And so I was thinking, you know what? Why not talk to someone who remembers the process of coming in that descent from heaven to earth? And Aaron is not necessarily an expert on conception or anything like that, but I think that the conversation will really help you if you are a potential parent that wants to work with your baby spirit's energy. So first, thank you so much, Aaron, for being here today. I can't wait to dive into your
Yeah, thanks
experience.
for giving me the chance to share my experience.
I
Right.
would love for you to share from the lens. So you're a dad yourself now. You've
Yeah,
conceived, you said 3 kids.
yeah.
Um, what do you think it would be like? Can you imagine what it would be like to be a new baby that had parents that kind of weren't with it with this process versus a new baby coming through that from before conception was talking to the baby spirit. We call it baby spirit, but you'll share more about what it was
Right.
like. You didn't necessarily wear diapers up there, but what would it be like to have parents that were really intentionally connecting with the spirit of that child all the way down into the birth?
Sure.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so let me give a little background on my, you know, what happened to me and why I think I can share some stuff on this. So when I was a kid, shortly before my sixth birthday, I was playing with some other friends in a neighbor's backyard, and for some reason I couldn't breathe. I couldn't take a breath, and I was struggling to breathe. And after a while of that, I tried to walk back home and I couldn't make it. And that breathing problem triggered something in me, and my consciousness or my soul left my body, and I watched as my body fell to the ground, and I was just kind of floating there next to my body. And a couple things happened really quickly. One was a life review. Like I relived my entire life up to that point in extreme detail. And one thing very interesting about that was it wasn't just that I relived it from my experience, but I also got to feel what it was like for people around me. You know, how I had impacted them. And a couple of things stood out. One was my mom and her love for me, and it really stood out in that life review how important that love that my mother had for me, how important that was. It simultaneously seemed kind of minor and small in the grand scheme of things, and yet it was significant and important. Um, like somehow it helped me and helped the whole universe. That love that she had for me, and then I could also feel my father's frustration. You know, he loved me, but what stood out to me was the frustration he had with changing diapers and a crying baby, and I could feel all of that. And so it's interesting that I was able to literally feel how I had impacted both of my parents. And I noticed a light in the distance, but I kind of didn't pay too much attention to it. And then I started to have questions, and as I would have questions, like answers would come to me. It was like I was spiritually connected to something bigger than myself. And the first question I had was, "What am I?" And it was like I could see myself as I existed there in this plane of existence that I consider to be kind of like parallel to our physical plane. And I existed as just a round orb of light, kind of a faint light coming from within, and I just that was the form I had, and it was very comfortable. It was I felt like I had been like that previously, like I had spent a lot of time as that sort of round orb of light. And then I had more questions. And as I would have questions, answers would come to me, and I would like re-experience stuff that I experienced before but had forgotten. And one of my first questions was, where did I come from? And so this spiritual memory came to me, and it replayed in extreme detail. And I had been a orb of light, just like what I was at that point, with hundreds or thousands of other orbs, and we all existed together in a like a what I consider like a sea of souls, and we were all very ignorant, and we had no experience. We were happy and content, but we were utterly ignorant. We didn't know what was going on, or we had no experience. We had no measuring stick to understand what was going on. No experiences to relate everything. And um, we would receive these gifts that would come down to us. And one time there was one fewer gifts than there were souls, and so I made the conscious decision that I was going to let all the other souls around me receive this gift, and I was going to pass on it. And when I did that, I was very, very gently lifted up out of this sea of souls, and I was contacted mentally, like a mind to mind communication, by a much more powerful, more wise entity that communicated that what I had done by giving up what I wanted to help those around me, that it was very important, and that it indicated that I was ready um, to start my progression, to start my development. And I was told that I was loved and I was cherished and I was very important, and that I needed to go through something that would be difficult, but it would be necessary so that I could grow myself and become more experienced and more wise, and gain understanding. And that even though it would be difficult, it would be completely worth it. And this higher level entity, which I'll call God, God was absolutely confident that this path that he'd prepared for me and for the other souls was absolutely worth it. Like, God understood that it was going to be very difficult, but was completely confident that these struggles were going to be worth it, and that essentially we could get all the difficulties of our existence out of the way very quickly, and then we could really enjoy our existence. And I couldn't you just make me how I need to be? Like, why would I need to go through something difficult? And God replied that we were all created with free will, that our free will was extremely important, and that it was like a core center stone of why we were ever created in the first place, was that we had free will. And God didn't want us to be like mindless servants to him, but to be able to make our own decisions. And that if we were deliberately or forcefully changed, it would it would negate that entire purpose of our creation. So instead, God created this mechanism for us to learn and grow through our experiences, so that we could, of our own free will, choose to be the kind of souls that we were meant to be. And those choices were all along the lines of being loving, kind, compassionate, honest, humble, having empathy for others. And that when we develop those kind of traits, we'd be ready to move on into much happier forms of being. And so it sounded okay. So I agreed with God that, okay, I that sounds good. I'm willing to go through this. And God was extremely pleased with me that I agreed to go through this journey. And before I went on this journey, I saw some souls who had previously been through this journey. They were like experienced souls, where I had been with a bunch of new souls. I was shown a whole lot of experienced souls, and they were extremely happy, way happier than I had been with these other new souls. The happiness was just off the charts. I couldn't even describe it. And they all knew what I was getting into. They knew that it was going to be difficult, but they also knew that I would join them someday, and that would be wonderful for them when I joined them, because every soul is unique and irreplaceable. And each soul that joins them, it adds something unique to the community that no one else could replicate. And so they were excited that I would join them when I was ready. And so with that, God asked if I was sure, and I agreed. And it's like I was rushing very quickly at a great distance. And I guess, coming into this physical universe, and I was shown a multitude of different planets that I could go to, that I could have this kind of experience um, on. And there was something about Earth. I was absolutely positive that this is where I wanted to go. And God asked me if I was sure, and I said yes. This is where I want to go. And so with that, the decision was made, and I was going to come to Earth. And so with that, that particular memory ended, and then I had another, and then I was kind of like back to being next to my body. And so I had another question. Well, how did I become this person? Why am I living as Aaron now? And again, this memory replayed of something I'd experienced, but I'd forgotten as a kid. And I had been a soul with some what I consider guides who were helping me choose a body and helping me plan the life that I was going to lead, to become Aaron. And essentially, they had a person that they thought I could become, and they showed me the life I would lead. And it would be a kind of angry, bitter person. And I just completely rejected it. I said, no, no, absolutely not. That's not for me. That's not what I want to do. And they said, okay, well, how about, here's some other options. And so they showed me some parents that I could be born to. And I thought the parents looked like, a good fit for me. It was my choice with the help of the guides, of course. And we started looking at, what kind of child could I become to these parents. And we looked at all the different genetic traits that were available, and what the options were. And I saw that they could have a redheaded child, and I really wanted to be a redheaded girl. Like, there's something about that really worked for me. I thought it was cool. I really liked the red hair. I liked that it was kind of rare. That really appealed to me. And I wanted to be a female because I felt like they were less violent. And I was concerned that maybe if I was a male, I would hurt somebody else. And those options were available, but there was something that wasn't quite right. There weren't quite enough genes to make this work, along with my personality. Somehow it didn't quite work. So my guides and I started looking at other options. And, we started looking at boys. And it turned out that for these parents, brown-haired boys, there was all kinds of options available because that was the predominant genes that they had. And so, we started looking at the options, and I wanted to be like the best-looking guy on the planet, and those options were available to me. But the guides, they showed me that if I was like the best-looking guy on the planet, I would become arrogant, and I'd be too promiscuous, and there would be a lot of spiritual downsides if I had made that choice. And so we backed the attractiveness down to, a little bit attractive, but nothing crazy. And that seemed pretty good to me. It seemed like a good fit. And then, we looked at intelligence, and I wanted to be the smartest guy on the planet, really, really like Einstein level intelligence. And that was available to me. I could have picked that. And my guides showed me that if I picked that, I would be arrogant, and I would look down on other people, and I would be frustrated with other people because they weren't as smart as me. And there would have been a lot of spiritual downsides of making that decision for me. And so likewise, we back the intelligence down to something intelligent, but nothing, nothing extraordinary. And likewise, we went through all kinds of other decisions for what this body would be like. And it's safe to say we looked all the way down to the most intimate details, and I knew what this life was going to be like. Then we looked at the parents. What would the relationship be like between the parents and me and my brother? I have an older brother. And so it's safe to say that I knew exactly what I was getting into. I was shown very clearly what this body would be like, what the relationship with my parents would be like. All of that was clear to me, and I needed to agree to it. It wasn't being forced on me. It was something I needed to agree to. And I saw that I would have really bad acne as a side effect of some of these genetic choices we had chose, and it was something I needed to agree to, and so I agreed to it. And then uh, the guides got into more of how my life would play out, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. Is I was shown um, like brief segments, brief clips of things I had done in other lives. I was shown, for example, in a previous life, I had gotten into a fight and I had been a bigger guy and I really beat up someone else pretty bad. And I was shown that that created, I don't know, for lack of a better word, that created kind of like a karma or like an unsolved equation, and I needed to balance out that side of that other part of the equation and balance out that karma and gain the education that I had to that negative event I had given out to someone else. I needed to then receive that back to complete my education so that I would understand that that's not a good thing to do. And I was shown that I would get into a fight and have my nose broken as a teenager in this life, and I saw that it was directly tied to this previous life, this event that had happened where I had hurt someone else, but I needed to agree to it, and I was shown how it would help me progress and how it was needed to help me move forward spiritually, and so I agreed to it. And likewise, I saw other events from previous lives and how they had created, a karma or an unbalanced equation or however you want to call it. It's like I had written checks and now I had to cash those checks. And there was other things that I had done in previous lives, some of which I'm not proud of, and something I would never do now. But they were morphed into how this life would develop and some of the stuff that would happen to me, and anything beyond a certain level I needed to agree to. And so I agreed to a number of different things, and how they would play out in my life. And but the reason I agreed to them is because it would help me with my spiritual development, help me get to where I needed to be spiritually, and ultimately it would not only help me but help others. And so I agreed to a number of different things that were directly tied to previous lives, and I was shown exactly how one tied to another. And so I agreed to quite a few different things. And then the guides further went on, and they showed me people that there were certain plans for how my life would go and how I would interact with other souls. And then in some situations there was plans. There were specific roles that I would play in other people's life and specific roles that they would play in my life. And so some of the events that happened in my life, some of that stuff was planned out. And I was shown why some of this stuff happened and how it would help one person or another. And you know, some of the difficulties that I faced in life, I didn't know it at the time, but there was a bigger plan for it. There was a reason for it. And so I agreed to this overall life. And when we had it all together, the guides and I looked at all these decisions that we had made in a total form, and they asked me again, "Are you sure you're willing to do this?" And I agreed. And the reason I agreed is because it would help me and help other people. I was kind of hesitant to some of this stuff, but I was shown that it would help a lot of people for me to live this life. So I agreed to it. And then I witnessed my own conception. And I don't mean from like a sexual point of view. I mean, from a spiritual point of view, I witnessed the creation of this new uh, fetus or body or embryo, whatever you want to call it. And it was really beautiful from a spiritual perspective. It was a very significant spiritual event when I was conceived with this new body that I was going to inhabit. It was really beautiful. And
Can you give us like every vivid detail that you remember, or was it more of like a feeling that you remember?
uh, so it was like the egg was a powerful spiritual entity, and when it joined together with the I guess the sperm, if you get into biology, they're always like, well, we don't know why one sperm or another gets in there. Well, it's because the egg and the spiritual and the guides and the souls planning all this, they pick, what gets in there. And the spiritual entity, this egg, like it was really um ecstatic and happy that it was fulfilling its purpose and developing this body. Um, it was um, um, it was just a wonderful, beautiful experience filled with spiritual light, and it was kind of amazing. I don't know. I'm not sure how else to describe it. It was really neat. Um, but when that, after witnessing that, um, I was done with that portion, and I was back to kind of floating next to my body. And there was other questions and answers that I had that are kind of interesting. I've covered some of that in other interviews. But let's see. I think your initial question was, how does a parent, how do they help get a soul ready for this life? And I think a couple things to keep in mind as a parent hoping to conceive a child and raise that child, how they can be a good parent. Um, I guess to start with, I would suggest, try to work on yourself to be more loving, kind, compassionate, humble, empathetic. And by doing that, you're, I think, aligning yourself to a soul that matches those kind of characteristics. There's a bit of a spiritual law, not law, but just kind of like likes attract like. And so if you want to attract a more well-developed, spirit, then it helps if you progress some yourself along the lines that we all need to progress on towards, being more loving, compassionate, kind, humble, that sort of thing. And then, no matter where you are, is to be a little bit forgiving of yourself, and remember that, you're playing a part in a bigger picture here. And even though you're not perfect, your imperfections could actually be helping the child that you're going to have to develop. Maybe it's something they need to help them get where they need to be. But the best we can do is to be loving and kind and compassionate. All those positive traits we all know we should be doing anyway. Um, if we can try to parent along those lines, I think it goes a long way.
So we don't have to be like Mother Mary or like this perfect immaculate conception vehicle. We just need to be in like a loving vibration and
Right.
have a conscious intention around healing ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and preparing for that connection. I like that it's like, it's not like we have to be perfect gurus or perfect avatars for awakened children. We just need to kind of match the energy where we want to go. If we want to serve awakened children, we become the awakened children. I know I work with like my inner child, and I work with my clients' inner children and healing traumas and wounds
Right.
so that we can be the love, because those are the things that can help us free ourselves. And traumas tend to hold us back. We're like, no, I can't be the love because I have fear. So that's
Yeah.
super, super awesome wisdom. I also heard you say something, and so my kind of channel download is just wanting to zoom in a little bit on. You said that your father had this like pain and frustration, but he loved you. Your mother
Right.
had this like woo unconditional love. And I was saying before this call, I was saying I work with the flame, feminine love aligns with masculine energy, which is that we are
Yep.
everything. We are the mother, the father, we are the feminine, masculine, up, down, black, white, and in 3D, when men come in, I've noticed like when spirits come in and become men, just like you were saying, you're afraid to become man because you want to be a sweet little redheaded girl because you want to be loving.
Yeah.
And so many men have gone through trauma of going through wars, and we have ancestors, and the epigenetics can be in us, and boys can be more aggressive. I remember watching my little toddler run around, and like the boys would be like climbing and bopping, and the
Oh
girls are
yeah.
like, here's my flower and my doll. Some of that can be in us, and it's not always um it's not always a strong blueprint, but I have noticed, like, even my beautiful, loving husband, when he gets with our daughter and he gets overwhelmed, like he can fly off the handle faster than I can. And
Right.
I know his dad had it like stronger and his grandpa had it stronger. So I guess I just wanted to address like this father, I'd call it kind of a collective, maybe father wound, where the fathers have had this anger. And I also was wondering if you had any thoughts, like you say the word God, and I know I grew up with the word God as well. And I always imagined God when I was a child because of the Judeo-Christian programming of like the man with the white beard. How
Right.
did you see God? Did you experience a sex, a gender, anything
Okay.
like that?
Yeah, to me, the God I witnessed looked kind of like the sun, like a
Okay.
humongous bright orb. And the interesting thing about what God looked like to me was that it was simultaneously a standalone, enormous, powerful entity, but that it was merged with billions and billions of individual souls that all together made up God. So it was like, on one hand, yeah, it was a individual entity, but on the other hand, it was like just countless individual entities that all contributed a small piece of God. So it was like both, and so all these souls that had been through the progression and learned their basic lessons, like they were merged with God and they were part of God. And so the way I see it is, we all start out with God, created simple and ignorant, and then we come to Earth to gain the lessons that we need. And then when we're ready, we'll go back to God, but we'll be enlightened and educated and more loving, and we will have freely chosen all the same characteristics that I witnessed from God. All the love and everything that goes along with it. Um, but yeah, to me, God looked like a giant sun with millions or billions of individual souls all combined together.
And so when I hear like sun god, my mind flashes to like the son of God Jesus, or Helios in the Greek tradition, where like the sun god, or Horus in the Egyptian tradition, where there's more of like a male deity, where it's more masculine. For
Uh-huh.
you, was it like gender neutral?
Gender
You're
neutral, totally,
gender
completely
neutral.
gender
Okay.
neutral. I don't like to use he. I think it's too limiting and doesn't really accurately describe it. But our language is kind of lacking,
Yeah.
and I think what I consider a good gender neutral pronoun. But anyway, no, there wasn't like God was just a man or male or female, but God encompassed all the best of both genders,
Yeah.
and I think some of our human view of things is a little bit too limiting, and what I saw, I think, completely transcended any idea of just one gender or the other.
Yeah, I love that. And if everything is God, is the creation,
Right.
then I guess I have this wondering if, like, when we talk about like Mother Earth, I wonder if Mother Earth could be sort of like a womb of the divine, like where we're growing, we're seeding like new consciousness. Or I sometimes in my meditation I see like, oh, planet Venus, like that's like the heart space, the love, and Mother Earth is this like feminine womb space. But there's also a lot of, menstrual cramp pain, and like there's pleasure, there's pain here on Earth.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I love your description of God being this infinite. And really, we don't have the ability to conceive it in this body, but we can just accept that it's something far greater, and we can seek to explore
Right.
it, understand it.
Yeah, and
Beautiful.
the other thing about God that, from what I witnessed, is God was all the wonderful, terrific things you could ever want God to be, and none of this hateful, judgmental kind of stuff. Like that just wasn't at all what I experienced in my interactions with God.
Yeah. And going back to, I just felt like kind of zooming in on the father wounds. Have you had any experiences, like you said, your father, when you experienced it as a soul anyways, had this like overwhelm and some frustration? Do you feel that that has been in the lineage of humans for a long time? Did you struggle with that? Because you have three children. That's
Right.
a big number, especially in the States. It's not cheap here. It's not easy.
Right.
We don't have villages to take care of our children as much. What's that been like as a journey for you?
Well, yeah, one thing I could mention there is, um, as I said, I got to see my parents, and what they were like, before I agreed to be their child. And what I mean, I saw my parents. I mean, I really saw them from a deep spiritual level. I knew where they were on their spiritual progression. I knew what kind of parents they were going to be, what kinds of pluses and minuses they had as people, what their interactions were. I had a very clear understanding of what I was getting myself into. And my father, um, he, especially growing up, he had kind of an anger problem. He was he was angry. He was worried about money all the time. He had a temper, and as a soul, my guides, like, it was significant enough that my guide said, "Well, you know, you need to take a look at this. This father is going to have this anger issue, and it's going to affect you growing up." And I looked at it, and I felt like the positives that he offered me as a father outweighed these anger issues that he had, and so, you know, I accepted it even though I could see those anger issues. And then, I'm certainly more understanding now that I've had my own children. You know, for me, the crying, screaming years were very difficult. You know, diapers. I didn't have too much trouble with the diapers. That was okay. But it was, for me, it was the screaming and crying that really I had a lot of trouble with. And I think I did a better job of holding back those natural tendencies towards anger that I think men face more than women. But I think, you know, as we overcome our own natural physical desires to do the wrong things, that actually helps us grow spiritually, and it serves its purpose. And so I think, you know, the natural male tendency towards violence and anger, I think as we work against those, we simultaneously grow ourselves spiritually in the right direction towards more loving, you know, kind and compassionate. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Yeah, and I imagine what your soul coming in and kind of rupturing this old pattern, even though you were born into it, you had a father who had frustration, the crying and screaming. Believe me, this morning we had a temper tantrum about a praying mantis, and they were screaming like
right.
bloody murder, whole neighborhood, you know. Um, it takes that like Zen Buddhist type energy to get through it, but it sounds like you might have really repaired to some degree at least a pattern in your entire lineage, like your children having had a more conscious father and a more calm soul. You taking on that pattern wasn't just, like you said, it's not just for your own soul development, like it
Right.
really shifts a lot of people, and moving forward in the generations to
Yeah.
come, that foundation of more compassionate fatherhood will be there in the line. So
Yeah.
thanks
Yeah.
for
You
doing
know,
that work.
we're all in this together, and every little thing that we can do to help those around us, we help move all of humanity, even just a little bit. We help move it in the right direction. And ultimately that in return is going to help us also. And so, you know, I'm thankful I was able to be a less, you know, hopefully a significantly less angry father than what I had. And, you know, hopefully it helped my children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and you know, hopefully it helped move things a little bit in the right direction.
Yeah. And if we didn't get like the perfect parents, picket fence, house life, we don't have to see it like, oh, we didn't deserve it. You know, I have self-esteem issues because my dad and mom did this to me. Therefore, I don't deserve love, or I'm somehow incapable this lifetime. Like
Right.
this is a whole different way of looking at things of like, I chose my parents. I chose it for the lessons, for myself. I chose it for my healing work, my dharma on this planet to serve other people. So I think we can really say like, good job, like soul warriors. Like if you had early childhood trauma or dysfunctional family that you grew up in, if you're that light worker, that healer that's moving through it, like good on you, keep going. What a
Right.
beautiful gift to this planet
And
to.
nobody should ever look down on themselves if they've had a difficult upbringing or difficult experience. The way I see it is, the souls that are going through the more difficult experience, I view them as braver, and they stand to reap a greater benefit than someone with an easier life. You know, if we came here and everything was perfect and easy, there's nothing wrong with that, but we won't gain the same spiritual education that we can obtain by facing more challenging lifetimes. And so, anyone who had a difficult childhood or something traumatic happened to them. I don't in any way want to minimize what they've been through, but I just want to point out, well, there is a corresponding spiritual benefit to you that is as extreme as the trauma or the difficulty that you're facing and overcoming. And so I think it's important to remember that there's a flip side or a silver lining to these dark clouds of life, that the difficult stuff we go through serves a significant spiritual benefit to us, and that we're going to someday realize that benefit and uh, grow from those difficulties.
Yeah, and I love that you're saying like we're not downplaying the trauma.
Right.
This is actually like a permission slip to go in and go deep and heal it. Like you are not the trauma. You are not the parents that yelled at you or that you're not good enough. And like once you can really say, hey, I signed up for this, like let's do the trauma healing. Like I got
Yeah.
certified last year as a somatic trauma healing practitioner because so many of my clients were having trauma. And I realized when I signed up for the program, got a couple weeks in, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much healing that I need to do too, like these blind spots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not easy being here. And since we're here, we can do all the healing work. What a beautiful gift. You also talked about, I thought it was so significant that you talked about the handsome knight in shining armor that, a lot of ladies on my channel and they come to me and they're like, I met this person. I think it's my ultimate beloved, my soulmate. And, oh, he's so gorgeous. And then he cheats and he's, not really showing up. And then we'll do some clearing work. And then it's like, there's a different energetic, a cleaner space. So I think we can all say that we grew up with men should look like superheroes, women should look like supermodels. This
Right.
program is so deep, especially in very consumerist cultures where advertisement, TV ads were thrown in my face so much as a child. So from a divine perspective, it's very different. It's not like,
Oh yeah.
the hottest people are the best, most gorgeous souls with the best like you should find one of those to be happy, right? If you're in a
Right.
enlightened soul, there was actually a different kind of nuance of like, well, this might not serve you. And so for those people, women and men that are going for the hottest guy or gal that they can find, like, how can you speak to them to remind them that there's like a deeper thing going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a human like anyone else. We all want the most beautiful, good-looking person out there, or at least that's our base human tendency to want that. But if we can look beyond that and recognize the spiritual benefit of picking someone that's right for you beyond just how they physically look, there's a significant spiritual benefit to that. We're all souls that are just wrapped in these bodies, and if we can look beyond the physical into the spiritual and find a person that's the right match for us, then it's all the more spiritual benefit from us. There's not a whole lot of spiritual, I mean, there is, don't get me wrong, but to accept someone who's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, there's not a lot of spiritual benefit to that. That's just naturally what you want. But if you're willing to accept someone who's not physically perfect how you might want them to be, we get a spiritual benefit from accepting someone's imperfections and loving them anyway. It helps us grow in our spiritual progression, and there's actually a benefit from that. And this is kind of funny. I remember talking or communicating with my guides before life, that there was there's that people would eventually figure out there's more spiritual benefit to marrying someone who's not attractive, right? And that I asked them, well, does that mean that people are going to start fighting over, they want to marry like the least attractive person, and the least attractive person would be the one that was hard to get married to because everybody wants them because they're going to get the most spiritual benefit that way? And my guides were like, well, no, that's never going to happen. It's not going to be like that. But I remember having that interaction with the guides where I completely recognized that the benefit of being with someone less attractive spiritually is a lot more than the benefit of being with someone who's physically perfect.
Wow, that's pretty wild. So I think it gives us a big permission slip to really let go of appearances and go more
Right.
with the feeling of soul. And I know I met my husband on the dance floor and we were just dancing at this beautiful ecstatic dance. And I like I had every reason to not date him. I was going to be moving in 2 weeks to a totally different part of like Southern California. He was in Northern California. He was almost a decade younger than and I wanted to have children soon. And I felt his energy and we both connected and it just felt
Right.
so good. And then the human constraints and the physical, like he was wearing this really ugly outfit and I was like, oh, he's not stylish enough for me. And all this ego came in the way. And then
Yeah.
I was like, well, I could feel my guides and angels tapping me like, dude, you know better than to judge a book by its cover by now. And I
Right.
was like, but yeah, but I need to do this because I'm, special. And eventually I just got knocked down and just was like, and I got to open my heart to this person, explore at that, and then reject him if it's really, my ego survives it. And my ego just didn't
Yeah.
survive it. So.
And then the clock hits all of us. I'm not as good looking as I was 25 years ago, and in 25 years I'm not going to be as good looking as I am now, and that's just the nature of this life. And it's okay. We're not going to be
Right.
young and pretty forever. It's
Yeah.
not
And I think
it's not that
that's
important.
when you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever it is, looking for your life partner, you don't always think about beyond the next few years. But if
Yeah,
you're looking
right,
at, having your notebook moment, dying in the bed with your 100-year-old lover next to you, having
right.
walked this beautiful path, you're not really thinking about that. So I think it's really important to connect on that soul level and just let the appearance thing be kind of a superficial bonus. And for some people, it won't matter at all.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
everyone's got to make their own decisions, and it's okay. It's all right. There's more than one way to do this. Uh,
Exactly. And if you don't get it right the first time, if you don't get to be that redheaded little girl, you get to be something else like Aaron
yeah,
being
yeah.
awesome.
There's not like one path that you need to walk down in life. It's not like there's the right way and then a million wrong ways. There's more like a plan A, and if that doesn't work out, there's a plan B and a plan C, and there's always backup plans for any
Yeah.
decision we make. If you look at how you drive from point A to point B, sure, there's probably a most direct route, but there's literally millions of other routes you could take and still get to the same endpoint. They're just maybe a little more time consuming and difficult, but you can still get there. It's not like you can only go one way.
Oh yeah. It's made me think of when I thought that I had this one person that was my soulmate and it just blew up, didn't work out. Part of it was my fault. We had this major, like I had a near death experience with it as well. I won't go into it, but it was a very awful experience. And I kept on thinking, oh no, I messed it up. It's my fault. I like this was going to be my life partner
Right.
and we're twin flames and I ruined this life. And I look now and I'm like, oh, it took me 5 years to grieve that, but I'm laughing now because like the life that I live now is probably 10 times better than it
Right.
would have been working with him and trying to fit into like a non-spiritual mold. So it's kind of funny, but sometimes even that process of 5 years of grieving, that's a good plan B if that's what our soul maybe really needs. Like I needed to really grieve that and realize like another lifetime I had his 3 children. This time I didn't, and he left me that lifetime and he left me in a country where like women didn't have the ability to work, and so I had to sell myself into like basically slavery.
Okay.
In a sexual slavery was very traumatic for me, and I was still thinking, oh, my twin flame. And this time I like finally realized it and was
Okay.
like able to process the grief. So it was completely clear. Now I'm just like, oh, I love you. Like, I hope you're having a great life wherever you may be. And I have my life now. So sometimes it's not as pretty as we, want it to be. If you want to just get in that white dress when you're in your, 20s and have the guy
Right.
propose and it's all fairy tale, but like, that's not what we came here for. We came here for
Yeah.
some deeper lessons and you get to have that sometimes too. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about just before we close. So that's so interesting. I studied gender studies when I was in college, and there's this idea I think that we're all waking up to whether we're in a meat suit of a man, a woman, boy, girl, it
Right.
doesn't matter that we have both feminine and masculine and neutral or the union. So when you were a soul, you were just this orb of light.
Right.
You didn't really have you didn't have to define it in any way. And then you thought, hey, being a little girl, starting off like that, would be probably less likely to be violent. So you were coming from sort of like general concepts of how gender might play out, sex and gender might play out on Earth. Um, but yeah, so do you feel like we have this male female energy in all of us? And if we're calling in a baby spirit, why do sometimes people I call the beings who incarnate here baby spirits?
Okay.
Why do sometimes like I'll read people as baby spirits and they really have like a male baby spirit or a female baby spirit, and sometimes they're neither. It's just you have a baby spirit and I can't get the sex or gender. Is it because they haven't chosen yet? Are some souls just inherently female and male? What do you think?
Well, during my experience, I saw that I've lived plenty of lives before this, and I've been both male and female. But
Okay.
for whatever reason, I tend to prefer to be a male, and I think that's the same for other souls as well. They kind of either get used to one gender, or that's just what they prefer. It's not really a significant difference spiritually as far as the growth that we can obtain, but I think we do tend to stick with one gender more as we go through the, these lifetimes. But I don't know why one family or uh, um, one soul might attract one gender as opposed to the other more than another. I don't know, but it was very clear that you know male female is more of a it's limited to this earth, right? We're not still going to be male or female when we progress to the higher levels after we leave here. We'll transcend all that and get to um, I guess a gender neutral type of um, form form of existence when we're ready for it.
Yeah. And in discovering this much broader perspective on divinity and who we really are, including gender, feminine, masculine dynamics, when you turned 30 or when you were 36 years old and had these memories come back that were retained as a 6-year-old, remembering before you came here, your pre-birth, like, did that help you in some ways kind of melt all of it? Like, oh, I'm a man and I need to act this way, or I am Aaron in this way. Like, how has it shifted you, your consciousness, your behavior, your actions that you take now that you've awakened this info?
Well, it's been made painfully obvious to me that a lot of the difficulties and struggles that I've been through in life, um, they were necessary for me to grow and to develop into the kind of person I am now and the kind of soul that I'm meant to be. And I think that stood out more to me than any gender issues. You know, being a male, that's what I am during this go round, and I don't have too many concerns about that. I think I've done okay at coming at overcoming the anger and some of the inherent male characteristics that are so human, but kind of like hold us back spiritually. I think I've done okay at overcoming a lot of that, but you know I haven't been perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way.
Wow, beautiful. And is there anything you would like to share? Anything else with our audience that you'd like to share, especially those who are wanting to bring in new life here, how to prepare, just any words to close?
Sure. We all want that perfect, easy life, the white picket fence and the beautiful spouse, and everything's just perfect and easy. But the real spiritual growth hits us with the difficulties in life. That's where we actually gain the most. And I know that it's very frustrating, all the different things that go wrong, but if you can just look at it a little bit differently and think, okay, well, if I can overcome this, I'm going to obtain some spiritual growth from it, and it's going to ultimately benefit me more than that perfect, easy life that I want would. When we're faced with these difficulties, or when our kids are faced with the difficulties, I'm going through some stuff now with my kids. You know, it's very frustrating, but there's a spiritual benefit to it, and that's why we come here in the first place. If we were just supposed to be content and not face any problems, hey, we'd be back with God. We wouldn't be here in the first place.
Beautifully put. Yes, it's a good reminder that we probably need not just once a day, but many, many times a day, because it is easy to forget who we are and where we come from. But thank you for being such a beautiful reminder of that, your incredible message and inspiration. All right, Aaron Green. So is there anything like where to find you? I'll put in the description box below. Does that work for you?
Sure. I'm really easy to find on Facebook, Aaron Thomas Green. People sometimes contact me through there, or you could email me, Aaron Green 1975 at gmail.com. And if anybody wants to reach out for whatever reason, feel free. I'll do my best to respond.
Awesome. All right, Aaron. All right, beautiful team. Go Soul Tribe. Namaste and namasko.